Hello and welcome to this Friday edition of the Watchdog. My name is Vuyo Mvogo. On the show this evening, we speak to Basic Education Minister Angie Motshekga about her department's preparedness for this year's matric exams, as well as the progress she says they are making in eradicating pit latrines in schools. After that interview, we get into a different conversation with leaders of two political parties that in 2019 made their first strides into national politics. The reason they are now buoyed and they reckon they are going to do even better in the November 1 election. That and more in tonight's edition of The Watchdog, which starts now. In less than 3 weeks, the largest number of full-time candidates will begin writing their matric exams. More than 700,000 full-time candidates are expected to sit for this year's National Senior Certificate, the biggest number since the Senior Certificate was introduced in 2008. Add to that all the health, logistical, technology and other complications brought about by the COVID-19 pandemic, and you get a lot of nervous South Africans, from pupils to teachers, parents and education officials. Basic Education Minister Angie Motshekga today moved to assure the nation, saying there was nothing to worry about. She and her department are on top of things. She's on the line to tell us what's giving her the confidence she has. Good evening, Minister. Thanks very much for your time. I know we still have more than 2 months to go still before it ends. But how would you describe, this year as the person entrusted with our basic education?
Well, 2021 continued to be a very difficult year for us as a sector. You will remember that we had to open late. Beginning of the year, we had to have had an extended June holidays. We were rotating in some of the intermediate classes. And earlier in the year, we had disruptions where we had to close schools. So it's been a difficult year, we must say. A bit stable compared to 2020, but not necessarily an easy year.
What made things a lot easier this year compared to last year?
It was easier in the sense as compared to last year. Remember last year we had to close a complete shutdown for almost 4 months. We had to face in learners. There was lots of anxiety. We really had to learn to live with the virus. We were caught up with some of the challenges that were existing in the sector of overcrowding, a lack of running water in schools. So there were lots of things that we had to put together in 2020. In 2021, there was much more a better understanding as to how to deal with the environment. People were much more calm around the anxiety around the sector, because last year, for instance, if there was one infection in the school, the whole community expected you to close the school without even understanding what the protocols are saying, to say, don't shut the entire school. You only identify area where there has been contact with the person who has been who's infected. So at least in 2021, people were much more calmer and better understood how to deal with the COVID-19 protocols. So it was a bit stable as comparatively.
Now, from that briefing you held earlier this afternoon, you did concede that you're still battling to get a full return of students to schools. You still can't find space to ensure social distancing and so on. Is the problem a lack of ideas? In other words, you don't know what to do? Or is it a question of we have ideas, but we don't have money or the means to actually implement the ideas we have?
No, it's not lack of ideas. The protocols themselves require every industry. Even in our offices, we're not able to have everybody coming in there. We're supposed to have social distancing. We're supposed to have a limited number of people in a place. Until now, that we're in level 1, we're able to for instance, have at a school, more than 1,000 people in the vicinity. So it's it is the requirements of the protocol as to how many people we can bring at a given time. So it's not ideas, it's clear, it's the protocols that demanded of us. We have to rotate. And indeed, there were the challenges that are there in the system. If we had more classes, we would possibly accommodate more learners, but you also don't want to have permanent solutions for what you think it's a temporal problem. So we can't add a whole number of classes and then suddenly we have classes we can't use. So we also don't want to have a permanent solution for what we think it's a temporal problem. And that's what I think has been bedeviling us.
But what have been the other possibilities, or what options do you have, including those that perhaps you cannot implement for one reason or the other? What was the full set of possibilities to mitigate this problem?
The first thing we did was to have rotational systems where learners were not coming every day to school in order to meet the protocols, which did prove to be very disruptive. The other, which some schools were able to be very innovative, use WhatsApp call to be able to interact with learners when they are not there. We had to use suddenly ICTs, which we had not planned for, to use whole scale. And on the other hand, our teachers, even the pedagogy that we have, even the environment, was not allowing us to have a hybrid system in terms of your connectivity in communities, access to instruments that we need to use for connecting. And so skills and pedagogy and resources were one of the major problems. But schools were able to create lots of innovations, especially, for instance, last year when we were in the lockdown, schools were able to arrange with parents to come and collect work so that while children were at home, they were still able to assist them. So lots of unplanned innovations were developed by schools, but still they were limited because our strength in the sector is in the classroom. Mm-hmm. And outside the classroom, we found ourselves completely weak.
Okay, which I'm sure has taught all of us some lessons about addressing these matters before crises like COVID-19 actually hit us. Now, one of the things you are asking people to do, in this case teachers in particular, is to return to schools to, as you called it, reboot the system. What exactly do you mean by that?
You know, COVID-19 brought lots of, the system just lagged down, there was lagging, and even the momentum was killed. For instance, we couldn't have sports, which does create a very gloomy environment in schools. And to say, following the protocols, let's bring back sports in schools. Let's, again, because now we are allowed to bring more kids, to bring them to school, so that at least we come back to some level of normality where we were before the COVID-19, just to reboot at that level, to make sure that we bring life back in schools, the momentum, and things that we used to do as the education department happen. But we then have to say we have learned, as you correctly said, a lot from the challenges of COVID-19. Let's build back better. Because what it means during this period, we've lost lots of teaching time, we've lost lots of learning time, and we can't afford not to claw back those losses. But we have had good experiences there are alternatives to what we were used to do. So we build back better, we claw back what we have lost, but use the experiences and the innovation that came through because of the challenges of COVID-19.
Just so one understands where you are coming from with this one, like the introduction of sport, which you mentioned in a year like this one, even the last one, where a lot of time learning and teaching was, as you have just said, lost. Should we really prioritize those instead of maybe utilizing whatever time we have, to catch up with the actual curriculum?
Unfortunately, we're dealing with young people. We have who need a holistic development. So indeed, our main focus is around learning and teaching, but young people also need to be to be engaged with sports. For instance, in the lower grades, we learn through play. And if there's no play, it really creates a very gloomy environment for young people who thrive and grow through play. Young people need to be engaged in sports as far as possible. They need to be happy. They need to run around. They need to really be young people and use that energy so that it's not only about learning and teaching, but it's also about their holistic development. We must bring back the cultural activities. We must bring music back where we had. So lots of things had to come to a standstill, which turned the environment to just become a very rigid environment of learning and teaching. It is a priority, but it's not the only thing that we do in raising our kids.
And what has been the response of teachers in particular?
Our teachers have been extremely helpful. Had it not been of the innovations that they brought, some of them not even from our own initiative, out of their own initiatives, you go to schools, you find that they've developed systems just to cope. As I say, these WhatsApp programs where we have no connectivity, linking up with learners, getting parents to come and collect homework, has been the creativity of our teachers and schools. So they've been extremely helpful in helping us to cope with the situation that we found ourselves in. And they've been, as I say, we've been working quite close, because the other thing that COVID-19 taught us was to communicate more, to consult more, and to cooperate more with all our key stakeholders, our teachers, our parents, but our non-governmental organizations that are involved in the space. And that's the other thing that we came out with as a plus from the experiences that we're going through.
Now, as always, this time of the year, we all get to talk about matric exams, and you sounded earlier very confident that as things stand, we are in fact more than ready. What gives you that confidence?
The reports and also the visitations that I've been doing in provinces. As late as yesterday, I had a whole day's meeting with our district directors now to finalize our plans and just make sure that everything is in place. And based on the reports that we received from provinces and districts, but also from the officials of DBE in the exam section, including the DG for the past 3 months, he's been in provinces on a weekly basis. So those reports gave me lots of hope that indeed we will be able to run a credible exam, we'll be able to administer it properly, but much more heartening was the fact that even our students are confident that they are ready for exams, and which is what really encouraged me. It's the reports, but also the engagements with young people that they feel they are ready, they are confident, and that gave us the confidence that we needed.
Let's start with the latter. What gave these students the confidence that they can face these exams without worrying about what they may have missed, given the fact that the pandemic is still with us? You know,
for instance, the grade 12s of this year, despite the fact we had interruptions with closing in, they never had holidays at all. Most schools extended even their teaching hours with 2 days. There were weekend classes, and more fortunate for this class, there was lots of support even outside ourselves. For instance, the business community, for instance, your NGOs, academics formed what we call through the NECT was a matric. And there's lots of support which was never given before that was organized and mobilized for these learners to give them the additional support. And we think it really has helped. It has gone a long way to help these learners to catch up on losses that they experienced last year. So there's been really lots of input and support that they have been given.
Master, I want to play a bite, because this is something, within that sound bite, you said something we tend to miss or forget or don't talk often about. Let's just take a listen to something you said earlier during that briefing. Okay, there seems to be a problem, Minister, with that particular sound bite. But one of the things you say there is that, matric is not only that, last year of your school, but a culmination of what a student will have gone through years of, learning and teaching. You attached so much importance to what actually happens prior to that very last year when a person gets to sit down, as they're about to do now, to write that exam. The reason you felt you needed to make that point today?
No, it's important because when we judge, for instance, the class of 2020, we have to go back and say what has been, for instance, the foundations in terms of the curriculum are saying is the 8th year of the NSC. And obviously, as you introduce a new curriculum, you improve yet and you start in the lower grades. For instance, the class of 2020 had an advantage that they had a full year the previous year. The class of 2021 had only 40% of their grade 11 last year. But the saving grace is that they came with stronger foundations from lower grades that enabled them to weather the storm despite the fact that they had very limited hours or teaching hours in the 11th grade. And that foundation helps in sustaining them, because if those foundations are weak and then you meet the storm like COVID-19, then you'll be in big trouble. So the early foundations are very key and extremely important to help learners even to sustain themselves or to be sustained during very difficult times. And I think that's the point I was making, even in terms of numbers that we are seeing, because the question was, why do we have more learners this year? And we're saying one of the biggest problems that South Africans have been bemoaning is the high dropout rate in grade 10 and 11, where we lose almost 30% of our learners. We had to really go back as the sector to understand why learners drop out in big numbers between grade 10 and 11. And there were quite a number of factors, but one of them is that they found the curriculum quite difficult when they were supposed to go to the last phase. And hence we had to strengthen our earlier phases to enable them to move with ease to the FET phase. So those are the building blocks I was talking about, to say you will not be able to deal with dropout rates at grade 10 and 11 until you sort out problems in your foundation phases.
Now, of course, you can make sure that we have, we help these pupils pull through, and eventually even those who would not have made it, say the first time or even second time around, do actually make it ultimately. Yes, you may have helped them cope with the effects of the pandemic and what it did to learning and teaching, but if you can't protect the integrity of this exam, everything else that would have gone into it may just, fall flat and or will be good for nothing. What have you done this time around to ensure that some of, the things we've seen do not happen again? What have you done to protect the integrity of this exam by way of ensuring that there are no leaks and such things?
For as much as we have to admit last year that we had a problem with the leaks, which the court, when it refused us to get a rewrite saying the extent of the leak does not discredit the exam, does not justify a rewrite because it was very limited and we couldn't prove to the court that it was so serious that it impacted on the integrity. Hence, Umalus at the end of the day could certify our exams and say they think we pass the test of credibility. But we still don't take any leak lightly. We learn from the difficulties that we experienced in other years. Last year was a shocker year in the sense that for years, we've not had leaks in the past 5 years because of the security measures that were put in place. So this year we had to go back to the drawing board to say, yes, we had not had a leak in the past many years. Since we had leaks in Limpopo and Mpumalanga, we never had any leaks. Now, 2020, we had a leak. What went wrong and how to strengthen that? And we did everything we possibly could do to make sure that we prevent any occurrence of what happened in 2020. But I can proudly say, without doubt, we always run exams with integrity, which are credible, because we hold them at very high stake. We invest so much into ensuring that these exams are credible. And that's what we do. I think we've proven that we do well. Accidents happened. But as you know, last year, the court said it's too minor for you to get a rewrite, because we wanted a rewrite to make sure that we can protect the credibility. But on assessment, they said, no, it's too minor to say it has affected the integrity of exams.
Of course, I mean, we do focus a lot on matric for a whole variety of reasons, but from grade 11 going all the way back, I mean, that system, what happens there is just as important and should receive as much attention as matric does. What have you done to ensure that at those levels as well, you know, everything goes smoothly, you know, in that area?
The entire system was, as I said, the entire system, as I say, had to really be looked at. Hence, we're very excited. I even reported on the progress around ECDs, because our problems start when the whole system starts. When kids start coming to school, if we don't have our systems in place, your ECD, there's proper stimulation, there's good teaching in your foundation phases and your intermediate phases. What we do in the FET phases, you know, grade 10 and 11, sometimes it's a bit too late to remediate. So we've been paying more attention to the lower grades, not only 10, 11, and 12. We said the senior phase and the intermediate phase are normally our death traps, because the dropouts that we get at grade 10, we can see they build up from grade 4. By the time they get to grade 10, it's almost 30% of kids that we have lost because of learning difficulties that we experience. So we've had to pay attention to all the phases, ECD, the foundation phase, intermediate, and the senior phase, to make sure that all the phases are given the necessary attention, because it's a seamless system, and any problem in any of the phases affects the next phase.
Unsafe sanitation facilities for our schools, which has been a problem for a very long time now. You did give a status report, which I'd like you to just very briefly go through here on the program.
No, thank you for that. And I must comment that the media will never show any of our good schools. You want to show us where we are weakly, and we accept it, because it helps us to be on our toes. But on safe, because the picture we've been showing doesn't give a sense that we've built a number of more than beautiful schools, but that's fine. In terms of safe, you remember when the president instructed us to eradicate all pit latrines. Yes. When we did the first count, we had more than 3,280 schools given to us. We had to go back to every province from the list that they gave us to go and verify the list of schools that they gave us. From the 3,000, we came down to 2,800. And so the 3,000 that came in the media is the original number of pit latrines that provinces gave us. Thus far, even with the COVID-19 interruptions, more than 1,000 schools have received new sanitations. This year, we have more than 1,000 schools in the pipeline that we are providing with a new sanitation. We are left in the outer year with about 800 schools that will need sanitation as we move up. So we've not finished the 3,000. We've done 1,100. We are having 1,000 in the pipeline. We have 800, which we still have to attend to next year. So that's what the progress is. We are mopping up, and we'll deal with any other additional a school which the provinces might have missed out in the outer year, which is 22-23. But for 21-22, we have 1,000 that we're going to deliver by next year. Again.
Minister, you and I talk about these things, and we do a lot of toing and fro. I want for a second to ask you to just think like a parent who is sitting at home and who is not involved in either as a journalist or as a minister, which you are, but who looks at everything that we have seen and heard in this country just over the past few months, whether it's the state capture inquiry, whether it's the stuff that the SIU and the Hawks and everyone else are involved in. And they look at the amounts of money that are being mentioned, that have been exchanging hands, often for no work done, and so on. And then an ordinary South African wonders, why do we still pit platoons? Even if it's 800 left, another 1,000 is in the pipeline, another 1,000 has already been sorted out of the 3,000 plus originals. Could we not have one day sat and said, this problem we're going to end? We don't want pit latrines in the next 2-3 months. Let's put whatever money we need to put into it and get this job over and done with. Could we not have done that? Could you not have sat or stood in front of your colleagues in cabinet and said, guys, with everything that we're doing in this country, the monies we're spending on a whole range of things, can we just not finish this once and for all and not wait for the next budget cycle and that kind of thing? Just asking.
I think if wishes were horses, I could give you a list of things I wish we could do in the sector. I wish I could have access road to school so that when the rainy season comes, kids don't have to cross rivers that sometimes are flooded because of the rain. If wishes were horses, I would have modern infrastructure. I wouldn't have kids walking long distance. So the list is long. What I do for my sanity, but also just to be able to keep the focus, government gives me 7 billion for sanitation. I look at that. I will be envious like any other person to say, I wish all these other monies that I mentioned, they could build me bridges, they could give me more scholar transport, they could give me better infrastructure, they could get me more teachers, but the reality of the fact is that money is not with us. It has all these difficulties that we are raising. And maybe as a South African just feel, I wish it was different. But then the reality for me is I can only function within that. So the other things I'll be really speaking as an ordinary, and I'm not sure it's any helpful for you to really be speculating on what could be. I just have to talk about what is, and what is what I have in my budget, in our capacity, and in our plans, and that's what I can account for.
But and as Njimutsecha, you sleep at night knowing fully well that you are doing the best that you can with all the powers that you have.
I know it could be better. I know it could be better. Every Friday, 7 o'clock, I sit with my infrastructure team on an ongoing basis. There are things that I just sometimes feel it could be faster, it could be better, it could be cheaper, it could be. But I just have to continue working with colleagues to push them, nudge them to say, let's build, let's the money that we've been given, let's spend it efficiently, let's spend it effectively, let's get more people to support and assist us as government. And you're quite right, it's not an easy portfolio. You don't sleep very easily because, as I said, there are lots and lots of things that if I had a choice, I would not have kids walking 10 kilometers. They are, because there's no money for scholar transport. There's kids, those schools that we're showing, if I had my choice, would not be having those types of schools. When it's a rainy season, the first thing that comes to me is, oh my goodness, my kids are going to have to cross those flooded rivers. So there are lots of things that could be better, but all I can say is not doom and gloom. Schools, especially schools, are doing their best under the circumstances. We're beginning to see changes in the system, especially from the bottom. You'll see when results come out, your previously disadvantaged schools are really holding themselves up. You're going to get schools like Mbili giving you 100% passes, then Ron and all other schools under very difficult conditions, giving you good results. And that also lifts up one's spirit to say, even if it's difficult, there are those men and women there who are doing their best to make sure that we can succeed. And the last one before we stop with you, I mean, we just had the teacher awards last year, and this 2 days ago, I was extremely excited to see that of the 35 winners, more than 20 were under 40. The top maths teachers were all in their 30s. So there's lots of hope also, because there's new energy coming to the system. There are new young people with new ideas, with innovation. So whilst there's gloom, whilst there are difficulties, but there's also lots of beautiful things happening in the sector. And those teacher awards is one of those things that keep you, when you have all these difficulties, you also smile to say, my goodness me, the system or the sector is in good hands. Young people are joining teaching with all the love, the passion, the energy, and are giving their best to it. And there is hope for our country.
Congratulations to the winners, and may there be many, many more of them. And thanks to you, Minister, for availing yourself this evening.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. Thank you very much for having us. Thank you very much to, and even to your listeners. Thank you.
Thank you, Basic Education Minister NG Motshekga. Now, after the break, another story of confidence, buoyed by making it to the National Assembly for the first time in 2019. Two of South Africa's younger parties are now talking big ahead of the November 1 local government poll. We speak to their presidents. After contesting elections for the first time in 2019, the African Transformation Movement, ATM, was rewarded with 2 National Assembly seats thanks to the 76,830 people who voted for it. While Al-Jamaa had been contesting elections since 2009, only in 2019 did they finally manage to secure a parliamentary seat after 31,468 voters gave the party the thumbs up. Now, buoyed by the progress they have both made so far, the two go into the November 1 poll confident that they are going to do even better in the local government elections. But what do they stand for? What do they have to offer? The ATM is led by the quiet, unassuming Vuyelwethu Zungula. Al-Jamaa has as its leader the charismatic Hanif Hendricks. Good evening to both of you, gentlemen, and thank you very much for your time. Hanif, when you were formed, or your party was formed, you were about the interests of Muslims. You were about upholding Sharia law. But listening to you and your followers now, you seem to have changed your tune. You are a party for everybody, a party for all communities, as you said this afternoon. And increasingly, you are embracing secularism.
Thank you very much. It is correct that, many parties either start in a church or in a mosque. We started in a mosque to try and develop a constituency. And once we were on solid ground, like you rightfully said, we managed to get seats in the city of Cape Town and later in the city of Johannesburg, and eventually a parliamentary seat. The Muslim community is a very small community, about 1 or 2% of the population, and we felt the time is ready to switch from a largely Muslim party, because that's our constituency, to a platform for all communities. And with the result that for this particular election, we are fielding 1,000 candidates, half of them outside the Muslim faith, and in 7 provinces, in 31 municipalities. So we've made massive strides because we have captured the imagination of candidate councillors all over the country, and they want to identify with a party. They also look at our track record. When we threw a lifeline to the NFP, 15,000 Zulus outside our faith voted for us. We got 2 seats in Escort, and we gave the community a lifeline in that 2 of their own representatives could represent them. And for the 5 years that the NFP had a balance of power in Escort and even a deputy mayor, Al-Jamaah did not impose what you call Sharia law on them. They could consult with their constituency and represent their issues and their interests in the Escort municipality. We now have a memorandum of agreement with the Nama royal family and the community. They are the community that met Jan van Riebeeck at Big Bay in Cape Town on the beach. And the queen of the Nana royal family, whose ancestors met Jan van Riebeeck, we now have a memorandum of agreement that Al-Jamaah will represent their interests in Parliament.
Okay.
But they also got the king now to stand as a candidate for us in Lavendale.
Okay. Vuyo Zungula, I mean, you two, I mean, you've been open about the fact that your party draws its support from African independent churches, and that largely you stand for Christian values. Please unmute yourself, Vuyo. Vuyo, please unmute yourself. Okay, we seem to have a problem with Vuyo's line there. Hanif, I want to go back to some of the things that, okay, we seem to have Vuyo back. Vuyo, did you hear my question?
Yes, the ATM stands for a faith-based value system in our country, which cuts across different religions, political divide, because when you're talking about a value system, you're talking about something that brings us together as the citizens. Because if you are talking about Ubuntu, regardless whether a person believes believes in God or does not believe in God, Ubuntu is something that ought to bring us together, because one can agree that the biggest challenge that we face in our country, it is a value system or the morality of the people. That is why you are going to see a high level of crime, because people are not peaceful human beings anymore. They would rather kill, rape, and hurt other people instead of finding peaceful means to address their issues. If you are going to talk about the high level of corruption, it is because people are no longer guided by a value of Ubuntu that places much value on the other person rather than their own. So our value system, it is what we are saying, that we need to have a look at the human element as a root cause of the problems that we have, both in the leadership of the country as well as the general citizenry.
Now, Hanif, you said you are now on solid ground. You have made massive strides to the extent or to the point that many people outside the Muslim faith across the length and breadth of the country can now identify with your party. What are you offering these people in this election? What are you putting on the table?
They have seen that, in the city of Johannesburg, we co-govern and we have an MMC because we recently won a seat from the DA in a by-election in Lenasia, and we did quite well. So our 2 seats have assisted the city of Johannesburg in electing a mayor, and our MEC has done such good work as a MMC that benefited the municipality, and people have seen the value that is added. Also, our councillor, our ward, this is the first time we had a ward councillor. Our ward councillor in Lenasia, the community calls him our beloved councillor. He's the only councillor in the whole of South Africa that's called a beloved councillor. He's got a 24-hour ethics. People can call him all the time, and I don't know where he gets your energy from. So people see that Al Zamar councillors and Al Zamar members of the mayoral committee are doing excellent work, and they are identifying with the party because the leadership that is provided produces these high levels of consultation with the community, and in return giving community what it wants. So Al Zamar is producing a new breed of councillors, a new breed of MMCs, and people identify with that and they want to be part of it. And in Harding, for example, a few days ago, over the weekend and Saturday, we had quite a good turnout. The whole community turned out. There was a rival party who also had an event. They had about 30 people. We had 600 people. And we find that these people were loyal to a previous party, and they see hope in Al Zamar.
But I'm still interested though in what you are putting on the table. Why should people vote for you?
Well, people should vote for us because we address their real needs. For example, in Cape Town, there is a sewage problem in that the governing party there pollutes the rivers and causes sewage pollution. And we have taken the matter to the environmental director, public protector, and also human rights. And there has been a massive improvement in areas like Massachusetts, in Sunfly. So we also had a problem, for example, with people not being buried and lying in city mortuaries for up to 9 months because they don't have an ID. We went to the High Court, got a court order, and could release bodies of a Tanzanian who jumped in the river to save another girl and considered the hero. And we just felt, that can't be. So we are now changing the legislation to ensure that especially Africans who do not have identity documents, that they don't lie in ice for months and months. And we now know exactly how to propose legislation to Parliament.
Vuyo Zungula, what is the ATM putting on the table in this election?
Yeah, thank you, Vuyo. For us as the ATM, what we deem important is that the municipalities must address some of the national crises that we have. For example, we've got a crisis of unemployment, a crisis of gender-based violence, a crisis of crime. So what we're saying on the unemployment part is that municipalities must have a strong local economic development plan that will address the problem of many of young unemployed people in those respective municipalities who are not participating in the economy. And the manner in which we are going to do this is that we understand as the ATM is that we have a lot of basic goods in our country that could be produced locally. And once we start a drive of localization and manufacturing, we are going to be able to create jobs, and we are going to have the economies of the respective districts being boosted, and the rand will circulate in those respective areas instead of depending on goods that are imported or goods that are produced.
Okay, there seems to be a problem with that line. Hanif, I'm going to come back to you okay.
The big metros in our country.
Okay, yeah, there seems to be a big problem with your line. I hope that it's going to hold up again. Previously you have maintained, Vuyo, that you are not a politician, but I'm sure 2 years into your stint in the National Assembly, I think you have now reconciled yourself to the fact that you are or should be a politician after all. And this week you wrote to the IEC demanding that the DA be struck off the ballot for the local government elections for those Phoenix posters. On what basis?
But Vuyo, I'm a servant of the people. My sole existence, it is to serve the people of our country, not to play politics. That is why you will pick up that in the past 2 years, I've never played politics. I've never attempted to attack any political party, because that is the biggest problem that we face, is that politicians see one another as enemies, whereas they should be seeing unemployment, crime, all of these problems as the real enemies. So that is who I am. On the issue of those posters, it is very insensitive for the DA to have a case whereby they are going to seem as if they are applauding people who killed many defenseless people, young people in our country, black citizens in our country. Therefore, we as the ATM, we can't sit back and just allow a party that is going to polarize society, a party that is going to allow and make a mockery of the deaths of people in our country, particularly during the times of elections whereby people are sensitive. Therefore, that type of a behavior would in fact lead to more divisions and more animosity between communities. Therefore, what we are standing for, it is the rule of law, and that we must work together to create a peaceful country and not create division.
Hanif, let me come to you. I noticed, okay, listening to you earlier, you don't attack the ANC. You actually speak glowingly of its leaders, like Chief Albert Lutuli. You speak about the Freedom Charter and so on. And then you just go for the DA, saying they have stolen more than the ANC and they are the biggest looters. Is that your strategy?
Look, when we speak about Chief Albert Lutuli, they were leaders of the liberation movement. The ANC was not the only liberation movement. They can't claim that, for example, people like Chief Albert Lutuli, who won the Nobel Peace Prize, wasn't there for the whole country, for all the liberation movements. So while we speak about them, it doesn't mean that we're praising the ANC. We have referred to the fact that the ANC have been looting, there's been corruption. It's just that the DA is more corrupt and loots more than them. And, we do have a co-governing arrangement with the DA in the city of Johannesburg, and it's working very well, and they've given us a free hand. So we can see that the ANC has got a good model for a multi-party democracy, and we don't want to damage that relationship. But with the DA, we are very worried in Cape Town that they want to form another country. We are very worried that at the moment they are running the white areas, very well, but not the other two parts of the city, which is neglected. So the DA gets things done, but only for whites.
Okay.
They don't get anything done for coloreds. And for example, in the areas where gangsters rule, they don't do much for the other sectors in Cape Town, and they are purely there for the interests of whites, and they have a pacifying policy for the coloureds and Indians and Africans. So those are the two things we are worried about.
Okay.
And the issue that they want to break away and form a white country.
Okay, you made a point.
Provision in the constitution for that.
Okay, Vuyo, I can't say goodbye before asking you about this. Why did you dump Kuli Roberts?
We did not dump Kuli Roberts. There is a confidential arrangement between ourselves and Kuli. Otherwise, we do not have any bad blood, no animosity. Everything is well. It's just that matters beyond our control, led that she could not continue being a candidate for that ward in Centurion.
Was that her decision or yours?
It was a decision that was made by herself, taking into account reasons that are best known by her.
Okay, I'm giving you 30 seconds to tell us why people should vote for your party in case they didn't hear everything else that you had said up until now.
What they should vote for the party is that with the ATM, they have an independent, genuine party that is serious about improving the material conditions of the people. We've got a solid plan to boost the economy and create jobs. We've got a solid plan to make sure that we've got more participants in the economy by utilizing the neglected economy that is worth more than 400 billion rands.
Thank you very much. Hanif, your 30 seconds starts now.
It cannot be that an African child must live in sewerage, eat in sewerage, play in sewerage. So Aldama has shown that it knows how to address it and we're making a lot of progress. We want full employment. Municipalities must, as a start, must employ all high school students. Already when they graduate, there's a presidential project that they can assist teachers. There's an EPW, but we want to go the extra mile and have full employment. Then with the homelessness, that is that and the backyard Dallas.
Your 30 seconds is up. Thank you very much for your time this evening, gentlemen. Vuyo Zungula, who is the president of the African Transformation Movement, as well as Hanif Hendricks, who is the president of Al Jamaa. And that's all we had time for tonight. Do join us again on Monday when I'll be hosting a debate for the battle of the Nelson Mandela Metro. Good night.